I am so excited to introduce our next session and speaker. Candice Ammori founded the Climate Vine, a climate network and community fund. Before this, she founded OnDeck's ClimateTech vertical, where she invested in and continues to advise climate tech companies as part of the company's fund. In the last year, she brought together 250 people across the global climate tech ecosystem to help talented folks start dozens of impactful organizations. So I can't think of anyone else better to run this session. With a wealth of insight, knowledge, and of course, first-hand experience, Candice will be sharing building a career in climate tech. Candice, the floor is yours.
Amazing. Thank you, Jordan. I want every intro to come with that accent. I think it makes it just so much more exciting. Okay, so I'm super excited to do this talk on climate tech and you. The format is going to be 15 minutes of me talking, sharing as many tangible and actionable insights as I possibly can in those 15 minutes. In the end, we'll have 5 minutes for Q&A. And so you can drop your questions in the Zoom chat. We'll bring you up and we'll have time for that. And so the things in the format for this, or I guess the outline that I want to take you through is how I personally got into climate, and then what I've learned by being in climate and what I've advised other people to do when they're trying to get into climate. So that's a general sort of story that I will take you through. First, climate tech and me. And so my background is I graduated college. I went to Southeast Asia for 2.5 years, taught business communications, was in microfinance. I came back to the US, got into tech, was on the founding team of a VR company. I then went to grad school, thought I was going to focus on the ethics of AI and get a PhD in statistics at University of Michigan. But in my first semester, the IPCC report of 2018 came out and I was like, fuck, that is, climate is just the thing that I've cared about my entire life, right? And so my undergrad was in sustainability, business policy, and I decided in 2018 that I wanted to spend 100% of my time in climate instead of 20% of my side time. But when I graduated from my program, and again, I left with a master's instead of PhD because I wanted to get into climate, I did not know that there was such a thing as a climate career, right? Where's the intersection of doing good and building a career around that? And so my initial thought was, okay, I will run my dad's liquor store and become an activist on the side because I really saw no other opportunity for climate careers. But I started getting involved in my climate journey. I pitched this idea around, essentially, my goal was to be surrounded by climate experts myself. And so I pitched this idea of bringing together technical business experts with climate experts to accelerate climate impact and accelerate our own personal impact. OnDeck ended up reaching out. I built out OnDeck ClimateTech for the past 2 years. We had 650 plus people go through it. And about half of them were transitioning into climate from other careers. Some of them were founders of billion-dollar companies that knew that they just wanted to spend time in climate, software engineering professors, like just incredible people that are coming into climate. And so I've spoken to a lot of people that are trying to get into the space. And I myself am someone who got into this space as well in the last few years. And so that's my story and why I can give this talk and give some insight behind this. But I think the question of why climate can be important. I think you all are sold, but I just want to dig into the urgency around it. And so when we think about the IPCC reports, one of the main takeaways I had was there are feedback loops here, right? And they can be positive or they can be negative, which is often the case in climate. And a positive feedback loop is Warren Buffett's net worth, where it just exponentially has increased in his older age. But in climate, it's often like an exponentially negative feedback loop where there's a tipping point and you can't really control it. And so that's why timing is really important. It's also why, this is a big crisis, but it's also the biggest opportunity and truly the biggest economic opportunity, but also just global impact opportunity, I think, that we have today. And so it's equal parts crisis, equal parts opportunity, which is exciting. And there's an urgency around it. And I really do think that there is a case for hope. There's a case for hope when it comes to seeing how many people are getting involved in this, seeing the technological drivers, including quantum computing that now is making fusion and even reinsurance more possible. And so I do maintain hope. And I think of this quote a lot, which to me, I try to think of stubborn optimism and have that mentality. But optimism requires believing in unknown, unspecified future breakthroughs. And there will always be a frontier of problems we don't yet know how to solve. Climate, in a lot of ways, is that frontier. And it's very exciting to be at that frontier. And so that's why I'm in climate. That's why a lot of the people that I know are in climate. And by the way, I'm going to share these slides after because there are a lot of resources later on, especially that I want you all to take. So that was my background. That was me getting into climate, helping other people get into climate, and also trying to instill both a sense of urgency and stubborn optimism in this space. For more sort of urgency, the question is why now, and why should you make that jump? And why is it actually less risky than you think it is? The first is that there's a lot of societal change. There's a lot of current technology that is being scaled. There's also a lot of new technology. And so the convergence of these trends creates a pretty awesome moment to be in climate today. There's also a ton of new talent and a ton of new energy. So two very tech-focused examples, but I think are good examples more widely or in a wider context. Just Chris Sacca, who's the most successful VC in the VC history of VC, started Lower Carbon Capital, which is a multi-billion-dollar fund in climate. And a lot of his teammates on the fund are scientists coming into climate and investing. They're billionaire founders who are going to commit their money and their expertise in climate and are 100% focused on this. And so all this new energy is very exciting, and it's exciting to be surrounded by that. There are ongoing technological advances, like I mentioned, quantum computing, right? That's one example, and it actually makes a difference here. The last is just explosion of climate tech investing. And so the last, I forgot the exact stats, but it is wild how quickly it has exploded, especially in the seed Series A space. So that's some context around why now. Essentially, the climate space is accelerating, and right now is an awesome time to get into it. And today it feels like an industry shift. Tomorrow it'll be an economic shift, right? This is something that we've talked about for the last couple of years, and even just thinking about where we are today, climate almost isn't an industry anymore. It's a bunch of sub-industries, and in 5 years from now, every industry will have a climate focus. So why you? Why should you be involved? And maybe this is, I put this in there because even if you are determined to get into climate, I really want to make sure you feel like your skills are helpful and that you can make an impact and to reduce imposter syndrome. And so really understanding that climate is complex. There's an unmet need for all types of talent to diagnose the problems, to build solutions, and that you can be a policy wonk, you can be an engineer, but you can be a marketer as well. You can be a storyteller, a salesperson, a financier, whatever your background is, there's truly a space for you in the climate space. And the climate space is so vast that a lot of jobs I would count as climate jobs. The really important thing is to just match your talent and expertise with doing good for the planet. And I see a lot of people get very hooked onto a couple of these snag points. And so it can also often feel very hard for people because one, like I've talked about, it's a giant space and it's hard to know where to start. And I think that, my advice, and I know I'm going quickly, but you'll have a recording in my slides, but my advice is to think about one, where's your expertise? And two, what industry are you most excited about? And narrow in from there. But yes, the question of where to start is often a big question of how to have the biggest impact. And this is something that I think people get too stuck on unnecessarily because we need everything. We need so many things. And so don't worry about how to make the biggest impact. Just think about that cross-section of your skills and where there's at least a space that does make an impact. What paths and rules exist for non-technical folks? Again, everyone is needed. And I think that, climate technologists and scientists often need storytellers and marketers and salespeople. And those people can be just as beneficial or more to creating a business. And then how do you get involved if you're early career? I think all of these are good questions and they can hold people back. One framing for this, and again, I'll go into tangible and actionable advice right after this. But another framing, again, because I see people get stuck on this, is this Ikigai framework. And Ayana Elizabeth Johnson used it in a climate with a climate lens, where she essentially asks, what are you good at? Again, what are your skills? What have you learned over the year? What brings you joy? What do you actually enjoy doing? Do you light up when you're telling stories, or do you light up when you are thinking about technological problems? What work needs doing? And again, there's so much work that needs to be doing across climate, across justice. It's a vast space, but I think just thinking about, what could make an impact, and also where would you enjoy making an impact? That is your sweet spot. So we're getting into the very specifics now, which is great. And the whole point of this. I also, like Anshuman in the last panel, have a sweet spot for my climate journey. I don't know what number I was on that Slack channel, but they were where I got my start. In 2018, I joined as soon as I knew that, climate was where I wanted to be. I think I don't know when I joined actually, but they started a podcast early on. Jason has done over 200, I think, podcasts at least. Great place to go. And then they have this large Slack community of great people. So my climate journey, fantastic. I started like a startup pitch event there that I think they're still doing. Really recommend them as a good place to start, both in terms of resources and community. Work on Climate, another fantastic place, both in terms of resources and communities. They have under resources these starter packs that I found incredibly helpful, and I've pointed a lot of people to. But their whole thing is, are you trying to transition into climate? How can we be helpful? And they're probably more of a tech lens, but I think they're more general and they do really great work. Terra.do is more of an, Anshuman of course spoke, it's an educational platform, but also a community platform. And they just do great work and bring in great people, and highly recommend them as a resource as well. Again, you'll get the deck right after this so that you can look through everything as well and have the links. Climate Draft came out of onto ClimateTech, the program that I started and built out over the last couple of years. And they do a great job of finding out what companies, well-funded climate tech companies, roles are open that are higher level, and then matching them with high-level executives who can be helpful there. Climate Base is I think the biggest climate job board. And they do great work. They have a newsletter, and it's a great place to look for just generally climate jobs. Another place that is great to look for climate jobs is any of the VCs in the climate space who are focused on climate will have some sort of page around their companies and the open positions. And they really want to get, talented people into their portfolio companies. And so Lower Carbon, I know, does a weekly newsletter of like the top 5 jobs that could be filled in their portfolio companies, but every good climate tech VC has it. There's a list of climate tech VCs on climatetechvc.co, I believe is their website. But you can reach out to me if you want to get a fuller list. And then I'll be starting Climate Vine. It will be formally announced, I believe in January, but it will have a community component and a component around, how can you make your impact and accelerate your own impact? And so keep an eye out, more information to come in the next couple months, but nothing until then. Some other miscellaneous things are Ed's Jobs List is a random newsletter, it's a newsletter that you can get around climate jobs. Activate Fellowship is incredible if you have more of a science background, whether it's in climate or outside of climate. I just really respect the work that they do. And so I would look into them. If you have that sort of technical scientific background and are looking to start a company in this space, it's fully funded. Breakthrough Energy Fellowship is also fully funded, and they have a more technical science sort of position. They also have more of a business, non-technical position that you can be a part of. So really respect those two fellowships. And also, if anyone in the audience has any crowdsourced, miscellaneous tips, I think that there are definitely ones that I miss and ones that I know that I missed, I'm sure. But you all might have some other ideas. So feel free to drop them in the comments or email me after, and I can add them to the resources. These are other tips or other just resources in general. So thinking about Climate Tech podcasts, I've gotten really into Catalyst with Shail Khan. I think he does a good job of digging in. Energy Gang is great. My Climate Journey, Drilled for the Wild as well. Books that I love All We Can Save. I think Donut Economics is fantastic. I think thinking about climate from an economic lens and policy lens is incredibly impactful. Braiding Sweetgrass is a fantastic book in general. And Regeneration is more around climate solutions. And it's a very well thought out book by the author of Drawdown. some publications that I love. Atmos Magazine, beautiful magazine, heated newsletter, very fun, very good newsletter. And then, like I said, Slack communities. There's My Climate Journey, Work on Climate, Terra.do. Some that I didn't mention were New Energy Nexus, Air Miners, Climate Change Makers, and then, of course, Climate Vine will be coming later. And yeah, I wanted to end on the 15-minute mark. And so this is my Twitter account. This is my personal email. If you want to email, get in touch. However, I can be helpful, definitely let me know. And I think that we have one question so far from, actually, I'm not sure, but it says, how do we balance my passion of sustainability and the idea of, quote, just work? Oh, okay. I was thinking just like justice work, but you're saying like just work. I think that you have to think about where you are at in your life. And also, Jordan, if we can drop the link to the presentation, that would be awesome so that people have the resources. Thank you. So I think when it comes to, passion for sustainability versus like just work, do you, I think that there's been this false idea of like, do you have a family to support, and do you, not want to move, and like essentially framing stability and making a living as opposite to doing good work in climate. And I think that today that opposition is, or that idea that they contradict each other, has been proven to not be as true. And I don't want to say it's like super easy to find a job in climate, because I think getting any job anywhere is always like a little bit difficult and takes some time and can be annoying. But I think that teasing out that framework, making sure that that you can make a living in climate, that there is a lot of money in the space, which shouldn't be your motivator, but it doesn't seem like it is. But you don't have to compromise stability for climate. I also think that if you're just in a place where you're not willing to or can't change jobs, that's kind of okay. And you can then champion sustainability within your own current job. If it's a big corporation, you can create a group of employees that all think similarly, and you can help them meet their probably net zero goals, especially if they're a larger company. And you can use their L&D money to be a part of, sustainability groups and get to meet other folks. And so the link of climate venture funds, let me try to find that. Are there any other companies that, or any other, questions that have come up so far? Because I can share the link. Thank you all for sharing also other ideas. I see, Catherine, you shared Climate EU. Okay, it looks like no other questions right now. Here's the running list of climate VCs that I think Jordan will hopefully help me drop in. Excellent. Okay, I love that a lot of the comments are just, here are other examples. I'm definitely going to collect these and be able to share them in the future. But that's all I have. I went through probably more quickly than I needed to. If anyone has any more questions, let me know. But truly, you can email me, you can reach out on Twitter. I would love to just personally help more people get into climate. That's a passion that I have. And I think as someone who, 4 years ago made this commitment, 2 years ago started onto ClimateTech, and now happen to, or just have met so many great people in climate. I haven't been in a field, and I've been in a couple different industries, but I haven't been in a field where everyone is just so giving, so kind, and just so willing to work together. Yeah, Jack. Okay, sorry, I need to add that one as well. And so that's a great resource. But yeah, it's a great space to be in. Really happy that you all are interested, and I think I will give back my time at this point.
Thank you so much, Candice. You provided so many resources that we had to share the slides immediately, but you also provided a lot of reflective questions that our audience, I think, just sort of looking internally to see if they're ready to obviously make that transition. So really appreciate you sharing your insight, but also your tactics as well. We will be starting the next session, which is the pitch competition, in a couple of minutes. So in the meantime, please feel free to go get a cup of water, go to the toilet. But before you go, a huge thank you to Candice, and thank you for sharing your insights.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.